Welcome to another weekly episode of NTX Live. My name is G.I. Sanders from NTX Vinyl. If you're not local, but you are in the US, you can shop online at ntxvinyl.com. And obviously, if you're on YouTube, you can subscribe and follow us across social media. This is a bit of a roundtable, meaning I'm at one end and you're at the other. So I'm doing this on a weekly basis to hopefully encourage some Q&A and some discussion around new releases and vinyl industry news and those types of things. I've got a few housekeeping things I want to get into, which I will do here shortly. And then, like I said, I am more than happy to field any questions you might have, go through topics that have been on my mind. So let's get things kicked off. I'll start going through a couple of things that are going on in NTX vinyl world in case you're interested. First and foremost, we are doing a bit of a giveaway type of thing on this Nirvana 8 LP box set. This is a massive box set. Came out, I think it's probably been about 6 months or so since this came out, around one of the anniversaries, which was the 30th anniversary. So if you're interested in the Nirvana box set, we're selling raffle slots essentially, and you can grab them for $10 each. I think we've sold about, hey JD, how you doing, man? There's the link for the Nirvana raffle. $10 gets you a slot. You can buy up to 2 slots. So if you like to gamble, throw your hat into the ring. This is something we're going to do on a monthly basis. We call it the monthly spin. We will do the drawing live and give it away to someone who buys a slot. Again, so $10 or $20 if you want 1 or 2 slots. I think we've sold about 25 slots thus far. The drawing is live this Friday, so we've only got about 48 hours left. So if you want to get on the Nirvana 8LP box set monthly spin, there it is. This is the exact copy that will be given away. So you can check that out. We just announced that late last week. So after I did the NTX Live last week, so I hadn't announced it yet. The other thing, let's see, a couple other housekeeping notes, which will be interesting. Hey, Jason, what's up, man? We are continuing to do what I'm calling 10 days of Pearl Jam. So if you're a big Pearl Jam fan, check us out on TikTok. If you're on TikTok, I'm spinning a pretty unique Pearl Jam album each day and doing a little feature on that. So I've got a few of those. I've done recently I've done the Third Man Records live at Third Man Pearl Jam, which is a really cool split translucent gold and black wax. That's a really cool record. I did that one recently. I did a Self Pollution Radio, which is a live radio broadcast from '95. This is the 1992 UK picture disc pressing of 10, which is a really cool and a pretty rare item. And then just today I did this Even Flow single, which is really nice. Again, another 92 UK. So I've been doing a bunch of Pearl Jam stuff. I'm a week out from getting to see Pearl Jam. So next week, I don't know if there will be an NTX Live. It won't be next Wednesday, which is when I'm typically going to do these, because I will be driving about 2 hours north with my son Ben to see Pearl Jam in Oklahoma City. So I'm super excited about that. So lots of Pearl Jam stuff going on. I am putting together a whole bunch of somewhat unique and then some of their just studio titles, Pearl Jam stuff for a sale that I'm going to launch. Might be able to launch it this weekend or maybe early next week. So keep an eye out for that if you're a Pearl Jam fan. If you're not, then you've obviously already tuned me out. So that's a few things going on in Pearl Jam land. Upcoming releases for thanks, Matt. Good to hear there's someone out there who appreciates all the Pearl Jam content. Upcoming releases. This is a big week for new releases. You have got the new Blue Train coming out by Coltrane. This is the Blue Note reissue. It's available 2 LP stereo. There's also a mono version. I'll put the link here in the chat if you want to check it out on the store. I'll have some of these in an upcoming episode of Vinyl for Sale as well. I've got a bunch on hold. So you got the Coltrane coming out, Blue Train, which is nice. I'm really excited to hear the quality and the pressing on that one. You've also got Pink Floyd Animals remix coming out. This is a interesting topic. Does animals need a remix? I don't know. I kind of like it the way it is, but am I going to grab one? Yes, because I got to hear what they're doing with it. So that's a big one. And then Strummer box set. Yeah, that I did see that one was coming out too. I don't know if that was released this week. I guess maybe so. If you got it coming, that's cool. There's also net new albums by Mars Volta, Death Cab for Cutie. Marcus Mumford's got a new record that's supposed to be really good, dropping this Friday. I've got all that stuff coming in stock to the local shops, and we'll have it online as well. Recently announced, literally in the last hour, My Morning Jacket. That's one of my favorite bands. They just released the second in their live series, a triple LP from a show they did in Chicago last November. So the pre-order just launched on that one. So I'm just dropping these links as I'm kind of talking about them in the chat, so you guys feel free to hit them. Then let's see. Other big announcement. This is more specific to NTX. Many of you may not know, but I actually have a record label as well. Me and a couple of my really good buddies. It's called the Dfw Legacy Series. And it is a vinyl reissue label. Here's the link to that. We have put out and or announced for pre-order almost 20 records in the last 2 years. And we've got our most recent one. It's not shipping yet. I'm the only person who owns a copy. Well, I'll take that back. The drummer of the band, Todd, owns a copy because he came by and grabbed one. The other guys in the label haven't even seen them yet. They're coming over this weekend to pack them. This is a sneak peek at an album that I am super excited about. It's an EP. It's a 6-track EP from a band called Dfw, which, again, if you're familiar with the Dfw Legacy Series, that is specific to Dallas-Fort Worth. This one is really cool because we did it on a translucent tricolor vinyl, which is awesome. If you're a fan of bands like Failure, Hum, A Perfect Circle, trying to think of anyone else. They're kind of a hard band to pigeonhole, but those are a couple that come to mind. This is a great EP, 6 tracks. This is one of those. I'm sure we all have the soundtracks to our high school. This is one of those for me in regards to local music, one of the ones that introduced me to a lot of local music. So that's super exciting. Hit dfwlegacyseries.com and you can look at more info if you're familiar with anything coming out of the Dallas scene. It's typically stuff from the early 90s through the early 2000s. If you've heard of bands like Toadies, Tripping Daisy, Deep Blue Something, Bowling for Soup, Reverend Horton Heat, those were all bands that got signed from the DFW local scene. And for every one of those, there's like another 30 bands right behind it, Dfw being one of those. And we put out like I mentioned, about 15 or put out or announced like 20 other records in the last 2 years. So it's super fun. Most of them are very limited. That Dfw album is limited to 200 copies. They are all numbered. And like you see, we do almost everything on a colored vinyl to keep it interesting. So really excited about that. That's probably the biggest in high rotation record for sure has been this Dfw record. I've listened to it probably 10 times in the last couple of days since it landed. So that's always exciting to get a new record in. Other stuff in high rotation, I acquired an amazing jazz collection about a week ago. Let's see, it was Saturday, I think. So it's only been a couple of days. I'm going to show you some of that, which is super exciting, and talk you through how I acquired it, which it's always kind of an interesting story. This one actually is really fun. Before I dive into the Blue Note stuff, of course, I think that'll take a little bit because I'm going to show you a bunch of those. I do have some upcoming videos. So I shot 2 videos yesterday, and you're getting the skinny on them. The first one is a video about 1971, maybe the most amazing year ever in regards to albums coming out all within that 12-month period. It's mind-boggling how many great albums came out in that period. So that was a fun one to shoot. So I shot the 1971 video yesterday. Still got to edit it. And then so that one may drop this weekend or this one. The other one, and this was a spur of the moment idea. I've got a long list, literally hundreds of ideas for videos that I just jot down, stream of consciousness. Anytime I think about something that could be a cool video, I put it on this list. And this was one that was way down on the list. It's probably been there for a year or something. And it was the idea around Sunday morning spins. One of the things I always hear and discuss with people is like, when's the best time, or when do you prefer to listen to vinyl the most versus say streaming or just, any other format? And Sunday morning is always a time that comes up a lot because people are usually at home looking to relax, maybe just chill. And that's why it makes sense to put on a record. So I did shot a video yesterday on my 10 perfect Sunday morning spins, I think is what I called it. So that was really fun. So I've got both of those to edit still. I'm going to work on editing them over the next few days and get one of those out this weekend. One of them will follow maybe next week or so. We've got another episode of Vinyl for Sale in the works as well, but that probably won't be till next weekend, not this weekend. So, all right, so let's look at some jazz records. I've actually accumulated a bunch of jazz records in the last month or two. I kind of compiled them last night, but this stuff that I just got in from this collection is pretty unreal. You're talking all original Blue Notes, the vast majority of them being in fantastic condition. So all really nice and clean. Most of these are from about 58 up through 62, I want to say. You've got Jimmy Smith. I showed you Blue Mitchell. This has been my favorite one that I've had a chance to listen to. I haven't even had a chance to listen to them all yet. This is Blues Walk by Lou Donaldson. This is a beautiful album. I'd never heard it before. I've heard of Lou Donaldson, just heard the name, but this one in particular, I really enjoyed. And again, just all on the iconic Blue Note label. I think this was from 58, if I remember correctly, but I could have that wrong. They were all like I said, right from 58 to kind of 62. I haven't come across a lot of collections that have a ton of Blue Note in them, and especially ones that are well kept. Like that's the thing, because they date back to the 50s and 60s. So as you'd imagine, they get pretty beat up along the way. But all of these, for the most part, have been really nice. I've already ran them all through my cleaner. Here's another Lou Donaldson, this one featuring one of my favorite jazz guitarists. That's Grant Green. That one's really cool. I have listened to that one. Here's another Jimmy Smith, which is really cool. All of these, again, I'm just so excited. I don't know how many of them I'm going to keep. Like you can only keep so many records, but these are fantastic. This is let's see, this is probably the last one I'll show you. This is an amazing Art Blakey record. It's just the cover alone I absolutely love. This is another late 50s Blue Notes. So what happened was, as far as how I acquired these, it started out just like most of my my digs do, in that a guy got in touch with me because he is looking to downsize and he's moving soon, and he had some records. It turns out it was a collection that part of it was his, part of it was his brother's, and part of it was his grandparents. It's about 300 records. He contacted me, just like most people do. They Google. When someone wants to sell their records, the number one thing they do, and I think I said this in my recent video about how record stores acquire collections. The number one thing people do is they Google record store near me. Like that's the number one search term on Google in regards to when it comes to like selling records, right? So he did exactly that. My shop in Frisco was 10 minutes from him, so it came up. He emailed or called me. I can't remember which one. I think he just emailed, and I said, "Great, send me some photos." And he sent me some pictures after a couple days, and it was mostly all classic rock stuff: Black Sabbath, the Beatles, Aerosmith, CCR, like great stuff that I would love to buy, and I always do buy. And so, because he read, you can go to my website and you can read what I buy, and primarily what I buy is classic rock, metal, punk, R&B, soul, classic country, and then jazz and blues, of course. But it's not the number one thing I list because I simply don't see it that much, and it doesn't sell that quick locally, and it's just not all that common, right? So he read that and thought, oh, this guy would be interested in my classic rock records and everything that's kind of associated with that. So that's what he had sent me pictures of. So I arranged a time with him, went over to his house, and I was expecting to see just classic rock stuff. So I go into this guy's listening room. Hey, Peter, what's up, man? And he already had them all set. First of all, this was unique. He actually had a turntable. He had a listening room, which I would say, I don't know if I've ever come across that. Maybe just a handful of times. Most of the time when people are like, I'm selling records, it's because they've been in a closet for 20 years, right? But this guy actually had a turntable. He had a collection, and he had all the records that he wanted to sell already in boxes. out on the floor, which again is amazing because he's done a lot of the work. And he said, here's the rock stuff over here. I think this is probably what you're looking for. And he had a box of it was probably 50 or 75 records. I think the whole collection was around 300. So I looked through the rock stuff and I was like starting to look through, and it was all the stuff he had sent pictures of: Sabbath, Beatles, Zeppelin, etc. Great stuff. Condition wasn't amazing, but plenty of VG and some VG plus records. And as I'm looking through, I said, well, what are all the rest of these over here? And he said, oh, well, that's some of the stuff I pulled out that I wasn't sure if you'd be interested in. There's some R&B, some soul, some jazz. I was like, oh, well, I buy all that stuff too. And he's like, okay, cool. I just wasn't sure because, you had listed kind of classic rock as the number one thing you're looking for. So the classic rock stuff was okay. Like I mentioned, there was nothing wrong with it. And I've already priced up a bunch of it for this weekend for my local shops. And then I moved over to the next box and started flipping through, and I see just Miles Davis galore and Lou Donaldson and Jimmy Smith and all of these just amazing jazz artists. And there was tons of other, Nina Simone, and there was like Ella Fitzgerald and Duke Ellington. It went back, and it was interesting because you could tell very clearly, at least I could, in hindsight, especially as I've looked through the collection multiple times, which of the albums were from his collection versus maybe his brothers, and then especially his grandparents, because that's when it got really old. Like there's some like even early 50s, like pre-jazz, like, stuff that I've never even heard of. There was some of that stuff. And a lot of the stuff, that earliest stuff was pretty rough, because again, that's the stuff that came from his grandparents. It turned out most of the rock stuff had come from his brother, and the majority of his stuff was the good stuff, the good jazz. So he still had about, 50 or so records, maybe 100 records on his shelf, 50 or 75 maybe, that he kept. And he said, these are the ones I'm keeping. But I stream music all day long now, and it's really inconvenient to have to move these again. So I just want to downsize. So I just want to keep the cream of the crop, the ones I really love the most. And so he kept kind of his favorite artists, not necessarily because they were valuable or collectible or anything, just the ones he really enjoyed. And he showed me a couple of those, and it was a lot of jazz, a lot of R&B, soul. But everything else, he was like, I don't need this many Miles records, et cetera, et cetera. And so it was super fascinating to kind of hear how it all came together. We came to a deal, which was great. He, in all honesty, he didn't want a ton of money for it. And so it was easy to come to a deal. And at that point, we'd been chatting for a little bit. And then I ended up staying even after we shook hands. And I said, I'll give you this much money for these 300-ish records. And it was a great deal. I was happy. He was very happy. He was like, oh, you made my day. Like, he just didn't want to have to move them. Right. And, yeah, absolutely. I've got, this is that collection that I've teased pictures of. So he was very happy, and we made the deal. And then I sat around and talked with him for like another hour. It was great. He was very knowledgeable, and just super kind, and was more than willing to just chat jazz. And I am definitely still in that phase where, I'm learning jazz. It's going to take me a long, long time to get to where I need to be from a jazz standpoint. So many of the discographies are so deep, and almost all of it is so old. The stuff I'm interested in is that late 50s, early 60s stuff. And so it just takes a long time to kind of grasp that knowledge, and you kind of have to pick it up piece by piece. So it's really great to chat with him. And I've texted him since. I texted him that night, actually, after I had a chance to go through it again. I said, hey, just wanted to thank you again. There's some really great albums in here. I'm looking forward to listening to them. And I am, like, before I'm selling any of this jazz, the cream of the crop jazz stuff, I'm going to make sure and listen to it all, just because A, I want to experience it. B, I might want to keep it. And then C, I want to make sure, if these are higher end records, which a lot of the Blue Notes are, a lot of these Blue Notes go for, $100-$200 ish, depending on condition, maybe a little bit more in some cases, per record. I'm talking a lot. If I'm going to sell a record that's that valuable in any way, shape, or form, whether I'm going to sell it locally to a friend, or I'm going to sell it online on Discogs or something, I'm always going to play test a record that I'm going to sell for $75 or $100 or more, maybe even $50. I try to, but especially when it hits that kind of $100 level, it goes up from there. So long story short, fantastic afternoon talking with this gentleman. I'm so happy that I was able to acquire this collection from him. And I did tell him, and I think he appreciated it. I told him, and because he was kind of like, "Hey, I don't know what to do with these. I know I don't want to throw them out. I don't know, I don't have the time to go through them. I'm moving, and I've got a ton to do, as everyone does if you're moving. Got a whole house to pack up, and I think the one line I told him, which I tell a lot of people, but especially when I'm in conversation with people and it's very cordial, is I told him, I said, "Hey, well, you know, uh, rest assured that all of these albums, they will have another life. Like, you're going to pass these on to people, myself included, who have never heard them, who have never enjoyed them, and who never would have thought to seek them out. Like, if I would have run across, like, for example, this record, this Lou Donaldson record, which again is the one I've listened to the most thus far. I've probably spun it 3 or 4 times. If I would have run across this in a record store or online or whatever, I've never heard of it. I've never seen it. So I'm, I know Blue Note, so I maybe would have taken a chance on it. But there's a good chance this album never gets heard by my ears unless I walk into this guy's house and he passes it down to me. And I don't know, I'll probably end up keeping this one, but there's a lot of them I probably won't end up keeping. And so everyone else is going to have that same experience or a similar experience where they're going to get to enjoy these as well. And so I was very transparent with them. I was like, hey, the reality is, it's like, let the music continue, let it breathe, and get introduced to new people, and it'll really turn people on, which it does. I can tell you firsthand, because I'm really enjoying them. So that was a big deal in the last week. So I've spent many hours the last couple days digging through that collection, even though it wasn't huge, but just there's so many different albums in there that I haven't heard of, that's what makes it super fun. And then B, especially when you come across one, you're like, oh my God, this is a super valuable album, or super rare, or looks really cool to listen to. So, right on. Yeah. See, I've never seen that Donaldson album. I've seen a few other Lou Donaldson. I've definitely seen a lot of Jimmy Smith, and obviously, when I didn't even show any of the Miles or Coltrane ones because there's not any Blue Notes here, but the like the Art Blakey and things like that. Those are just really cool to see. So, and again, I'm still learning when it comes to jazz. So there's nothing to be said that I won't continue down that journey in the near future. So there you go. There's a story of the new jazz collection I acquired, which is really, really cool. So that was the main thing that's kept me busy over the last few days. I've been pricing records like crazy. I did a thing yesterday. I went live on Instagram for, I don't know, 30, 45 minutes while I was pricing records. And I don't know if that's something where I should try that on YouTube. Maybe I'll do it here on NTX Live, where I actually go through and price. It's kind of hard to do logistically, as far as like showing what I'm doing, because you almost need like multiple cameras, which is a whole big deal. But that was fun. People seem to enjoy it. People are like, hey, that's really cool that you're showing, kind of, again, the behind the scenes aspect of what it takes to run a store, which is a lot of what I do over on Instagram, way more casual and kind of off the cuff. So I've been doing that pretty frequently. I've priced, I think I'm up to about 5 crates this week. It's Wednesday, but I started on Sunday. So I've done about a crate a day. On average, it takes me about 2 hours to do a crate, which is about 60 to 70 records. It really depends. It can fluctuate though, because if it's all stuff I'm very knowledgeable about, I can pop through pretty quickly. But if it gets into genres or just more obscure titles, then I got to look up every one. I'm looking up every artist, every album on Discogs. Obviously, condition depends a lot on it too, because if I have to clean every album, even just with a spray and a wipe, that slows me down a lot. So, anyways, I was going through this whole process on Instagram yesterday, and there were a few people who seemed to really enjoy it. So it's something I may do from time to time again. So if you're interested in seeing some stuff like that, make sure and follow me over on Instagram. I don't know if I'll do that here on YouTube, kind of a different format here on YouTube, but so that has kept me busy pricing records. The other, so obviously I've got 3 local shops to price records to continue to fuel inventory, but I've also got a number of events coming up. Yeah, no sweat, Jeff. Definitely just follow me on Instagram if you're an Instagram user. I'll probably make a weekly thing of that too. And again, sometimes it'll just be 30 minutes, 15, 30 minutes. Sometimes I might go longer, it just depends. But so I've got I'm working on an event locally in Denton, which is just north of my area. If you're local, otherwise that means nothing. But there's a really cool bar called the Vinyl Lounge. I've done an event there before. I'm working on another one, hopefully for early October. So just in a couple weeks. So I'm going to need records for that. And I'll sell new records as well as pre-owned. Um, then there's another record show in the Dallas area. I think that's like the third week of October. So I'm gonna need inventory there. And then following that on is the big one. There's a big event the first weekend in November locally, which is the music festival here. And I always have a big tent at that. It's called the Switchyard Festival. It's a free event. They like 30, 40,000 people come through this event. There's a couple of really good bands playing 90s throwback bands. And it's a massive day for record sales. It's really cool. I put up a pop-up record store. I have a 10 by 20 space. And I think last year I counted and I brought like 25 crates of records or something. So there's a ton of prep going on for that. I've got a bunch of people that work with me who are pricing records in anticipation of that. And I'm pricing as much as I can just to build up inventory. So lots going on as far as that's concerned. Oh yeah, I totally get that, Peter. Well, the good thing is on Instagram and just like on YouTube here, if you miss it live, it's it's on demand. So you can go to my reels on Instagram and you can see the last one is me pricing records, which is kind of interesting. Again, very casual type stuff. Let's see what else. I think that's all of the main stuff I wanted to cover. I'm absolutely open to any questions or topics if anyone has any. Went through. I mentioned new releases coming out this week. There's a ton of them, but yeah, all good, Jeff. Like I just said with Peter, just watch it on demand. It's there. I almost always archive my live streams to make them available because I know how it goes, especially when I'm doing stuff like this in the middle of the day. I don't expect people to always be able to tune in live. So let's see. I went through kind of upcoming videos, highlights as far as new releases for this week. I talked about all my Pearl Jam nonsense, which will continue. So yeah, there you go. I'll talk more about so a week from now, I drive, like I mentioned, to Oklahoma City. I'm taking my son who's 12 to his first Pearl Jam show. I think I counted it's going to be my 14th or 15th Pearl Jam show. And then we drive back. So that's on Tuesday night, the 20th, that show. So my son's having to skip school on Wednesday because we're driving back Wednesday morning. And then I've got an 8 o'clock flight that night with my wife, and we're flying to Denver Wednesday night because the Pearl Jam show in Denver is on Thursday. Hey, how are you from Ireland? That's really cool. I've never been to Ireland. Would love to be there one day. One day, my dream is to see U2 in Ireland. I would love to see. I think Croke Park is the big venue they typically play there, or the Point maybe is a big venue. At least they've played before. I don't know if they're probably too big for that now, but anyways, that's cool that someone from Ireland's watching. Someone messaged me the other day from South Africa. I think was really cool. Said great channel, big fan from South Africa. I'm like, that's just crazy. I showed it to my kids. So like, check this out. So that's the beauty of YouTube, which I didn't really expect going in when I started doing this stuff. I was just really focused on my world and what's here, but it's cool to see people from all the world. So yeah, the Three Arena. There you go. I think the Point is an old venue that they've played, but back in the day, like an iconic venue. Let's see. JD says, how many additional records have you been able to fit in your new space? It's a good question. I think I've put in, based on the math of the number of new shelves I did, and I added about 1,500 I say new, meaning new inventory, new and used, about 1,500. So it expanded it significantly, and I've got room to do more. I've just got to figure out how I keep up with the inventory. That's the main thing. Shelves are easy. Space is easy. It's keeping up with pricing records is the hard part, and pricing pre-owned and ordering new records is such a big deal. So Miami, Florida. What's up, Richie? Thanks for tuning in, man. Question from Richie. Is there a difference in listening to music on vinyl that was recorded analog versus digitally? I feel like it's almost not worth it to buy an expensive record of music that's digital. That's a great question. I will give you my personal response to analog versus digital. In a perfect world, you're listening to a vinyl record, it should be analog, right? Like you would expect that because it's an analog format at its core. The issue is that just about everything, well, there's a bunch of topics to discuss here, but one of the things is you got to understand that everything, more or less, as a generalization, that has been recorded as far as music goes from about 1990 to current day. So you're talking about the last 30 years. Now, again, I'm generalizing. Just about everything in the last 30 years has been recorded digitally. So there's no way to have an analog recording when it's never been on analog to begin with, because when Pro Tools was invented and became the standard for digital recording studios, which over-indexed on that in the early 90s. There was still some stuff in the early 90s that was going straight to tape and was truly analog. But by the vast majority of stuff was digital from the onset. So it was never analog to begin with. And so that's the first thing I always respond on this conversation is knowing that is a fact. When Pro Tools took over and studios got rid of their tape machines, what are you just not supposed to ever listen to vinyl on anything that's been recorded in the last 30 years? No, that's, yeah, exactly. Like you just said, Richie. Yeah. So that was not, now, in my opinion, my personal answer to that is no, that's ridiculous. I still love the vinyl format. Just because it didn't originate on 2-inch tape, does that mean I still don't want to add it to my collection? Because here's the thing, and I know I'm not alone here. I prefer to listen to music on vinyl. Now, why do I prefer that? Well, yes, I like the fact that if it's analog, there's maybe a warmer sound. If your equipment, which I like to think I have decent equipment, I don't have a $50,000 setup by any means, but I think vinyl sounds better to my ears. Even more importantly of that is my main setup. Everything I listen to in my listening room is set up for vinyl. I don't have a CD player. I do have a cassette player. Barely works. But it's all set up. My main speakers, my subwoofer, my amplifier, my turntable, everything is set up for vinyl. So if someone hands me a CD and says, this is a great sounding CD, I physically can't play that damn thing. I could put it in my car, but I don't drive anywhere. So the thing with me is that it's not just about, is it analog or digital? It's the format itself. And I say this all the time because people say, well, why don't you just buy the CD then? Because the CD is digital and you're saying you're playing a record that came from a digital source. I don't even have a fucking CD player, for one. And two, if you take the CD and I just put it in the little tray and I push it in, then I can't see it anymore. I hate that. I like the fact that I can see it. Obviously, I don't have to tell you that the artwork on a CD is tiny, no different than the artwork on my phone in a little thumbnail. So it's not only about analog versus digital, it's about physicality versus digital in my mind. Because here's a perfect example. This album right here, the one I was talking about at the beginning, this band Dfw, which I'm sure you've never heard of, and nor should you have heard of. This album came out in 1996, I believe. This was never recorded analog. Does that mean I don't want it on vinyl? Because we sourced this from the original high-res digital. We didn't take MP3s. Sometimes we've had to. Actually, I don't take that back. We've never had to use MP3s because that's a highly degraded digital format. But if you grab the high-res digital files and you remaster them, this is important. You have them remastered for the vinyl format, you can have a quality sounding record, this one included in my hand, that never touched tape. It never had analog involved at all. That doesn't mean I still don't want to add it to my collection, because all of my music collection is here on my wall behind me and in my room. And I'm not going to say, oh, that album came out in 2001, which means it was never analog, which means why would I want it on vinyl? Well, I want it on vinyl because I want to add it to my collection. I want to enjoy it in the room the way I enjoy listening to music. So that's my point of view, going back to older stuff like this jazz stuff I've been talking about. Well, yeah, it's amazing to get a copy of a jazz record from 1958 and know that it's true analog all the way through and through. But that's just not the reality from something from 1998 or 2008 or 2018. Because again, by and large, there is no analog. No one records that way anymore. Not no one, but mostly no one. So, it's not a cut and dry answer. This is just my opinion, but I get really, and I think everyone does. I think there's such strong opinions. Does that apply to reissues? Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent. Well, the reissues are harder because, then you're not sure where the source is. And there's this huge debate going on right now in the audiophile community of audiophile nerds, which I don't associate with, or I don't include myself with, because I don't consider myself an audiophile. There's a huge debate there of labels, and I saw someone mention earlier, a friend of mine actually, and said he showed the jacket, the back of an album, and I can't remember what album it was, but it showed exactly where it was sourced from. And now MoFi is starting to put exactly where their source comes from. But the reality is, a lot of times you don't even know that information. So when labels, whether it's a major label, indie label, doesn't matter, right now are going to try and reissue an album. Like, they know an album has been out of print since, let's say, the 70s or 80s or whatever, and they're going to go reissue that. Of course, they would love to be able to get the analog true master tapes and source from that. The reality is, a lot of times that's not possible because they can't find them. They've been destroyed. They don't even know where they are. And so what are they supposed to do? Just go, oh, well, we should just not press it to vinyl ever, and then it's just only going to be streaming for the rest of time. Well, that's terrible for someone like me who loves to enjoy music on a turntable, right? TJ, oh wait, sorry, let me go up a little fire. Jeffrey, and bottom line is, collect, listen to what you want, how you want, like whiskey, drink it how you like. I totally agree. I'm not a whiskey drinker, but I know what you mean. TJ says, I think listening to vinyl adds to the experience. I have to open the album, start to play it, and then I'm looking at the inserts, reading the lyrics. I think it's something that is missing from streaming. Completely agree. I stream music all day long. I tell people this. In fact, I was discussing this with the buddy I acquired the jazz collection from, because he was telling me that he doesn't need all this stuff because he streams it again. And he was like, if I have time, this is what he told me. He said, if I have time and I know I've got an hour or maybe more, I will, sit down and actually put my records on. But time's tough these days. People are busy. And so streaming is the convenience. So I think the combination of having a streaming catalog, if you will, along with a physical media catalog like vinyl, is the perfect duality of being able to really enjoy music, because I can put on something streaming. I've got Sonos speakers all through my house and outdoors. So I can push play on something, stream it all through my house, and walk around and do chores and clean my bedroom up and do laundry and all this, and music is going the whole time in my house, except for when I'm shooting videos like this. And that's great, and I love it. But when I actually want to listen to something, I come into this room and I pick out a record, because then I'm actually going to pay attention. So I'm right there with you. Richie says, I guess for me, the genre is a huge part of what makes me enjoy the format. Listening to Led Zeppelin on vinyl just hits different than, let's say, Drake on vinyl. Yeah, I agree. But you got to keep in mind, there's a younger generation of people who are just discovering this. And so for them, what Led Zeppelin is for you is what Drake is for a lot of people, in regards to just stature and how much they love that particular artist. And they want to own it. They want to own that physical thing. That could be a CD. Sure. It's not for me. It's for lots of people though. But vinyl's, a great option these days. TJ says, I started listening to music when CDs started to get big, and now lately prefer vinyl. Absolutely. Oh, I had tons of CDs. I still do. I didn't keep a lot of my CDs, but I've got especially all the ones from local artists and my kind of artists that I really, really love. But there was a whole bunch of CDs that I got rid of years ago, mostly because they were just so beat up. I had them in the big Case Logic books. I had the big, thick Case Logic that held 144 CDs or whatever, and had them double stuffed in all of them. So they were all just getting scratched up against each other. I didn't take care of them. I wish I would have. I know better now, but when you're young and you're naive. So Chris says, I've been recording records for 25 years, and even in the late 90s, when we used 2-inch tape, Pro Tools was still a part of the process. I'm like you. The analog debate often annoys me. Annoys is not even a strong enough word, man. I'm so sick of the analog debate from audiophiles. And again, I can say that because I'm not one. So I'm not in that debate. I do not put myself into conversations around it, but I'm with you. I've been in a studio. It was only the first demos I ever did were recorded to 2-inch tape. And that was because the studio we were using still happened to have that accessible. And this was in 98, 99. But from the 2-inch tape, it went right to Pro Tools, and then you started editing it. So there's already a digital step. So it's but who cares? It's just nauseating in regards to what people are consumed with. And here's the reality of the whole conversation. This is what really gets me. Unless you've got a sound system that is like super high end, in my opinion, most people's ears can't discern the damn difference, anyways. Most people are, the vast majority of people right now have a turntable that costs maybe a couple $100. They've got a nice little bookshelf speakers. Awesome. Do whatever you can afford. But the reality is, you're not going to hear a difference between a digitally cut album and an analog sourced album unless you're on a system that has massive clarity and a massive ability to provide the nuances in that sound. If you've got that, fantastic, enjoy it. That's awesome. I'm not there, and I know a lot of the normal vinyl buyer collector is not there, and that's totally fine. Most people don't ever get to that stage. Jeff says, to that point, listening to more vinyl has forced me to take some time to just sit down and play a record. Absolutely. It's an excuse, man. It absolutely is. It is a ritual. It commands your attention when that record's on. If you don't have an automatic turntable, which I don't, you got to pay attention. I got to know after, whatever it is, 18 minutes, I got to flip that record. If I'm in the other room, a lot of times I'll be packing records in our storeroom. I'll be packing records or pricing records, whatever it may be. And I'll have to turn my turntable up, kind of fill the whole house with music. A, so I can hear it well. B, so when it gets to the end of the side, I have to run back into my office and flip it. And a lot of times I'm like, I'm too busy to do that right now, and I just need to focus on packing records. And so I won't do the turntable, and I'll just spend digitally, stream it throughout the house. That being said, what I choose to stream and what I choose if I'm listening to vinyl are usually two completely different things. Meaning, I may choose a jazz record or something if I'm going to put it on the turntable and fill the house with that. But if I'm going to just go stream it, I almost never stream jazz. It just doesn't feel right. Like I almost feel like I'm not doing it justice, regardless of the source. I just like the tactile nature of putting on a jazz record, hearing a little bit of crackle. Love that. Don't have any problem with it. Life has surface noise. So do records. Like, it's a real thing. And so I usually, again, the choice I make is dictated a lot by the format, whether it's streaming or vinyl, which are really the only two formats I play around with. So yeah, some bands just sound great on vinyl, regardless of how they recorded it. I totally agree, Jeff. JD says, I've got Sonos too. It's great for background while working around the house. Much of that music is from physical format CDs. Great for hands-free casual listening. Totally agree. I love Sonos. Great product. Pretty flawless. I wish turntables had the automatic stop, but it seems only lower end turntables have that. That's a good question, Richie. And that's a thing a lot of people don't realize. And I was having this discussion with a buddy of mine. I don't know if he'll watch this. A buddy of mine who helps me price records and does a lot of stuff at NTX with me. Jarek is his name. And he was telling me his parents were asking him that question. Like, how come when you spend more money, you get less features on a turntable? I'm not really sure of the answer. You would think someone would have made by now, and I'm sure it exists. There's a lot of turntables out there, a higher end. And when I say higher end, I'm talking like, I don't know, $500 and up, $1,000 and up. So nothing crazy. But you would have think someone would have made a higher quality turntable with automatic features, but they just don't do it. I don't know if it's because the parts are more susceptible to break, just like cars. The more bells and whistles you have, the more likelihood you are to have problems. So I do appreciate that in that higher end tables. Like, for example, not the current table I'm on, but the previous turntable I had, which was a project debut, which is, I believe, the first model project ever came out with. This is going back to about, let's see, my son is 12. So it's going about 15 years. That project I had for, the last 13 or 14 years until I got my current one. Never had a single problem with it because there's nothing that can really break. All I had to do is replace the band to make the thing spin, but there's no mechanism other than the motor making the turntable spin. I imagine if you add, from a manufacturing standpoint and a usability standpoint, you add a bunch of manual or automatic features and things like that, maybe more problems arise. But I'm okay with that, honestly, because again, I think if I'm going to put on a record, I want to pay attention to it anyway. So I don't mind getting up every few songs and flipping a record. Like, that's not a problem for me. I do not post to the UK. Snowy 1967. Apologies. I'm hoping to do that someday, but it's just so expensive. Every time someone asks me, even recently, hey, do you ship to Canada? Hey, do you ship to Australia? Hey, do you ship to UK? I say, give me your address and I'll get you a quote. and I go do it, and it's like they want to buy a $35 record, and it costs $60 to ship it from the US. It's just ridiculous. I mean, bigger companies can get around it because they're doing international shipping in bulk, I guess, but it's just really tough. And I hate selling people. I hate even responding with the quote because I feel like I'm trying to screw them over. I'm like, I usually screenshot it from USPS and go, hey, it's going to cost $54 to ship you this $35 record. Do you really want it? And most of the time it's like, no, thanks. But that's the deal. My guess is that it adds to the immersive nature of the format. Yeah, I agree, Richie. Like I said, like I don't mind that my turntable is completely manual because for me, that's what I'm in it for. I'm here to sit down and pay attention anyway. So it's part of that experience. Random question from M. Fitcher. Live has some great albums, Throwing Copper, Secret Samadhi, yes, but you can't find their vinyl anywhere. Do you think it's related to their ban and fighting or lack of demand? I don't know if it's related to the band and their fighting. I have seen some of that. Um, but I can tell you, as far as their stuff being available, it was in print for sure. Like in the last, go back about 18 months, 24 months for sure. And I had Throwing Copper in stock, and I had Secret Samadhi. Maybe not Secret and Samadhi, but whatever the album was before Throwing Copper. I can't remember the name of it right now. So their stuff's been around. It's hopefully just waiting in line. I know Throwing Copper, I think, was a music on vinyl pressing, one of them. And I had that, and I wish I still had it. But yeah, no, there's definitely demand. Great band back in the day. That Throwing Copper record, man. Lightning Crashes is a fantastic song. Like, you want to talk, I would love to have that on vinyl. I don't have that record on vinyl. It's a great, great record. All right, what else we got? We've been at it about 46 minutes. I dig it. There's 38 people on. Who else has got some questions? Questions about I see Record Store Day, Black Friday list just came out. I'm checking my email while I'm doing this. So if you're big into Record Store Day, the list just looks like tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow the list comes out for Record Store Day, Black Friday. That doesn't impact me, believe it or not. Well, I take that back. It does impact me. I don't participate in Record Store Day. So the main way that Record Store Day impacts me is that I have to start fielding questions via email, via text, and via social media of, can you get this release? Will you have this release? And my answer is no, I do not have it. I will not have it because Record Store Day will not approve my store. It is what it is. It's cool. No big deal. The most frustrating part is I have to turn away customers and send them to other shops locally where they go get them. The thing is with Record Store Day, and I think a lot of people are starting to realize this now, is there's very few releases that you have to actually wait in line for anymore. There's pressing plants are catching up, and they're pressing enough of these things. So with each Record Store Day, it's gotten this has started to happen more and more and more, and stores are stuck with a lot of inventory. So there are handfuls. So let's say Record Store Day, Black Friday, there's probably, I'm totally making this up, maybe there's 100 releases coming out. Undoubtedly, there will be 3 or 5 or 10 releases that sell out quick because there's low pressing amounts and the supply does not meet the demand just because they're taking a guess. Meaning the label and Record Store Day as far as how many they're going to press. Like they're only pressing 2,000. They should have pressed 5. There are scenarios like that. Those are the anomalies. 90 out of those 100 titles, they're going to be readily available from every Record Store Day approved store the next day and for weeks after. And a lot of times now record stores are having to discount heavily on these titles in the weeks following Record Store Day because you commit to buying X number of copies of all these different releases. And that costs a lot of money. Wholesale new records are expensive. If there's a record that you're buying at Record Store Day or right now in any record store and it costs $25, I can tell you, and I'm being honest with you, that record costs the record store itself about, on average, $16, $17, $18. So there's a $5 or $6 margin in there to make $5 or $6. That's great. Nothing wrong with that. It's a good business. But multiply that $17 or $18 times hundreds of records, which is what a lot of record stores buy for Record Store Day. And it's a huge upfront investment. So after seeing this for 3 years on the business side, I kind of think it's a blessing in disguise for me personally that they don't let me in the club because I just don't know if I want that hassle. I really don't. I've seen it time and time again. And after the last record store day, it was really rampant to where stores were like, within a week, stores were discounting titles 50% off, which means they're not even making money on them anymore. They may be even losing money. They're just trying to recoup their cash flow to make sure that they can pay their bill for that huge, investment in the title. So still a cool thing. It's good for the industry. But again, I don't participate. I just have to turn people away because they don't let me in the club. So yeah, there's a lot of hate for RSD. Let's see, JD. I have a beautiful real wood bass dual CS 5000 for the late 80s. I paid $500 for it new then. I had a pro replace the belt and a new order phone blue. I've got an order phone blue on my table as well. Love that it lifts up at the end of a record side. There you go. So it's a vintage one though. I haven't seen a lot of new turntables with the automatic stuff. Scott says, little side topic. Anyone ordering international getting massive delays in Chicago? If I order to see it, if I order and see it appear in Chicago, it's going to be 3-4 weeks. That's tough, man. Maybe just stuck at their hub or something. Jeffrey says, yeah, the curve on RSD is bottoming out for sure. Yeah, it's gonna. And again, I'm supportive of RSD. I think what RSD does is fantastic. You got to understand these people. It's like a small group of people. This RSD is not a big company. It's a handful of people dealing with all the logistics of all of these record labels and all of these different reissues and pressings. Massive amount of work. So I applaud them for everything they do. I hope it sustains long term, but I do agree with you in that I think the hoopla that really ramped up over the last couple of years because of COVID and because of all the new collectors of people waiting in line for hours, I think that's going to start to settle down, would be my guess. But who knows? There's still a lot of new collectors who don't really know that the titles are going to be readily available after the fact. They just see limited edition and they go nuts, Peter says, oh, wait, sorry. Miss JD. Yeah, my local record store owner says the new vinyl prices are bad for him, as not only did the prices go up from like 25 to 40, his profit margin went down. Yeah, it's a real thing. Prices, not all of the labels, but a couple months ago, there was a big price increase where an album like Abbey Road went from costing record stores $14 to like $20. So that means you couldn't sell it for 20 anymore. You had to sell it for 30 or 35. It's just, yeah. And that was just an example, but yeah, I still buy RSD stuff too. Luckily, I'll be honest with you. It's been years since I've gone out to RSD. But I have a bunch of good friends and coworkers and people who go out and grab one or two releases. So I'll just tell people, hey, if you see these, grab them for me. But in reality, it's like even distributors after the fact, even though I'm not RSD approved, once RSD is over, it's the Wild West. And even the distributors are like, get rid of these. So let everyone have, because everyone's in the same boat if it's a release where they press too many of, Profit on new vinyl is much smaller than when retail was low. Yeah, no, it's undoubtedly the cost has gone up on vinyl for everybody involved because of the cost of goods and the cost of labor and everything else in this world. Vinyl is not immune to it. So, but it's still a good business, and you can still make money off of it. You just have to be smart about it. And I think like what most stores do is they balance that margin on new vinyl, which is obviously much lower, but you got to balance it with the pre-owned stuff, because if I can go buy a pre-owned collection for $5 a record, whatever it may be, obviously I've got a much better chance of making a decent margin if I can sell those records for 10 or 15 or $20 because they're good titles, versus a new record where I got to shell out 20 and sell it for 25, which is a very real scenario. And so it's definitely a delicate balance, and one that I have learned a lot about over the last couple of years, and I'm still learning. And it's a constant battle, and it differs for every title. That's the thing too. That's a crazy thing to me. It's like, how do labels decide that a Nirvana record is going to be more or less expensive than a Death Cab for Cutie record, than a My Morning Jacket record? It costs more or less the same. Let's assume they're all single LPs and they all have a standard jacket with a standard insert. The cost is all the same, but Nirvana's a bigger name, or whoever it may be. So they charge more. They charge a premium for bigger names, and the labels decide what those MSRPs are. The labels set the price, and that dictates everything. And so the labels are in control like they always have been, and they'll sink or swim, which is what they always do. Scott says, don't know if you spoke about this yet, but what's going on with the location expansion? I'm in Cedar Hill and I've been a couple to your locations and love them. Awesome, man. Um, so I expanded the shop in Highland Village, which is in the Louisville area where I live, which is, I believe is what you're talking about. I don't have any immediate plans to expand my North Richland Hills or Frisco locations, only because I'm waiting on the right spot. Like it has to do with timing and it has to do with the location within the marketplaces my physical shops are in. So when the timing's right and the right opportunity's right, I will very likely be expanding those two. There is also another marketplace, Painted Tree Marketplace, where my locations reside. There is another one in Mansfield, which is quite a ways for me, and that's been in discussion of whether or not I should open up there as well. But we'll see. Nothing firm and nothing decided. Richie says, do you have a dollar bin in your store? What's your criteria for records that make the dollar bin? I have some records that I've found in dollar bins over the years. I've never thought I'd find that price. So I don't have a dollar bin. What I have, at least in my Highland Village location, which is where I have much more space. So only about in that one, I have a clearance section and I sell those records for $4 each, or I sell them for 3 for 10. So it's essentially a couple dollars off if you buy three. So it's 3 records for $10. As far as criteria, hopefully, the condition is VG or better. I try not to put anything in my store that's lower than VG, unless it's a highly collectible record that's just in bad condition. For example, in this recent jazz collection, I just priced them yesterday. There was a couple of legit Miles Davis records from the late 50s. Prestige, I think, was the primary label on a couple of them. And these records in VG Plus would go for $150, $200 or something like that. These copies were rough. G covers, maybe G plus vinyl. I did clean them and I did spin a couple of them to see if it would get through. Lots of surface noise, but I priced them at like $20. So those are kind of discount clearance records as well, higher end stuff that the grade is just not there. But what am I going to do with it? Like, I won't put that in a dollar bin, but someone still may love it just from a collectability standpoint. So yeah, I don't sell anything cheaper than like $3 or $4, and it's all genres. I just try and make the condition good, and I do try and a lot of times the other way stuff will end up in those clearance bins for me. It's just if I have an overstock of too many of one artist or one album, so I may go to storage, and I may go, oh my god, I have so many Billy Joel records from the late '80s, which are typically $5 to $10 albums, maybe if they're in perfect condition. So a lot of times I'll maybe pop some of those in just as an example artist into my clearance section, just to kind of move some inventory, and so people can find some good records, good titles, good artists, known artists in those bins versus just it all being obscure, kind of random stuff. I try not to put any what I consider to be how do I put this, unsellable genres. So I don't stack a lot of big band in there. I don't stack a lot of classical and spoken word and stuff that people just don't buy. I try to make it just accessible music, right? JD says, I still like RSD, but seems to be losing interest, maybe because they had too many the last couple of years. I do think fatigue is a part of RSD. And again, that's not their fault. They did the best they could through COVID to keep it alive. Splitting it into the different drops, I think initially was a fantastic idea because they had to reduce on the number of people in stores because of all COVID restrictions. But then, they did that like a second year. They had the drops, and I think that's when the fatigue started to set in. But now they're back to their main RSD in April and their Black Friday. So it's just 2 a year. So, I think they've got that figured out. So I don't think I'm sure this Black Friday will be huge. I haven't looked at the titles yet. The list is sitting in my inbox, but be interesting to see if there's anything on there I care about. Next week, if I do an NTX live, we'll talk about the RSD list. But like I said, I'm driving Wednesday to Oklahoma, so I don't know if I'll do it. Maybe I'll do it on Tuesday. Chris, haven't been to RSD on that day since 2016, but I pick up those I want that are available afterwards. I do the same thing, man. Like if there's something I have to have, I'll tell a couple buddies who I know are going out, or if I get a chance to go out, I may look for it. But typically, I'm just like, no, like I'm not going to wait in line. My record store owner said he cannot return even defective records that come back. One really bad, totally wrong record number, two set. Even then, they only gave him a small credit, less than he paid. JD, I'd be curious to talk to the guy you're talking about. It depends on the distributor you order from. I can tell you there are some distributors, even the larger ones that absolutely take returns. I get stuff that shows up on my doorstep, and if I see that it looks damaged from UPS, I'll take photos of the box before I even open it. Then while I'm opening the box, I will video it and I will show them as I'm pulling the albums out of their sealed box that all of these corners are dinged on these 20 records. And I'll send them photos of those. And they send me an RA number, which is a return authorization, and they go right back to them and I get full credit. Now, that's not every distributor, but that's this. I'm talking about one of the main couple of the main distributors. So it depends who you purchase from. Maybe it depends on your account and those types of things. But damaged product is damaged product, man. I don't care if it's records or freaking boxes of cereal, whatever it is. If it's unsellable, it's unsellable. I will, if I get a whole box of records in and 49 of them are great and there's one, well, then I'll just discount that one and put it in my discount section in one of my shops. And it'll be discounted to where I'm not making any money off of it, because maybe I paid $18 for it. I'm putting it on the shelf for 20 because it's really a $30 record, but it's got a big corner ding. But some collectors don't care about that, and they love going through and saving money and don't care about the jacket if it's got a corner ding, as long as the vinyl's nice. I do take returns from customers all the time too. People message me and say, hey, I bought this record at your shop. It's been 2 weeks. I just opened it up. It's really warped. I say, bring it back. I get it back. I send it back to my distributor and I get a full refund on it. So that's the way it rolls on my side. I'm not sure what your store owner is dealing with. Scott says, do Mansfield, please. Really close to me. I could help with that location inventory if that would help. Appreciate that, Scott. I may hit you up, man. Stay in touch. Mansfield really wants me over there. They've been talking to me for at least 6 months. I would say about once a quarter, I get a call or an email from the manager over at Mansfield saying, hey, when are you going to open up over here? So I have a feeling eventually it may happen, but like I said, it's just a drive for me. So there's a lot of things that go into that. Vinyl Me Please is my new love, says Peter. Right there with you, bud. I love Vinyl Me Please. It's not just like every record label pressing, whatever it may be. They're not all fantastic, but a lot of them are really good. And the thing I appreciate about Vinyl Me Please, and I've said this before, I've done a YouTube video on Vinyl Me Please actually on featuring some of my collection that I have from that club, because I've been a member for years. And I just love that they care. Like, you can tell when you get a record. In fact, this, I'm going to go off camera here, but this Thin Lizzy record that just came, this version of Jailbreak, you want to talk about quality. This is so cool. Check this out. So not only, this is a Vinyl Me Please. So check out what you get with this record. First of all, you've got their terrible sleeves. I do hate the sleeves because they rip, but you get the hide sticker, which tells you exactly where it's come from. Lacquers cut by Kevin Gray at Coherent Audio. Then check out, then you get the Obi strip, which is really cool. More details on the Obi strip. Then they put the silver foil jacket on this thing is so cool. And you got a die cut sleeve. You've got an art print, which is really cool. This is a heavy kind of flat art print. And then check out the record itself. It's got the original, just beautiful. And it sounds fantastic. So I love Vinyl Me Please. This is the latest one I've gotten, I think, is this version of Jailbreak, which is fantastic. So I love that. And yeah, absolutely love their club and have been a member a long time. Scott says, RSD, all the vinyl variations at every store, the comic book and sports card industry in the 90s overdoing it. I don't disagree, Scott. It definitely does feel that way. Jeffrey says he needs one of my Dead shirts. I need to do another run. I think I'm going to do another big run of t-shirts leading into November for that Switchyard Festival event that I mentioned. So I'm probably going to do a run of not only the Dead tee, I might do my Pearl Jam Stickman tee, maybe my Nirvana one. I haven't done tees of a lot of those. This one I just need to reprint. So once I do, I'll get those up online for you guys as well. Have you ever been to South Florida and visited shops here? I have not visited shops in South Florida. Only because I don't go there very often. When we go to Florida, which we do yearly, we usually are going to the Tampa area. Sarasota, Siesta Key. And so there's not a lot of record stores in that area. I've looked. I think there's maybe only one in that area, probably in Tampa proper, but we just fly into Tampa and then we drive south. So I've never done shopping much in Florida. TJ asks, what are your thoughts of collecting color variations? Started my collection more that way, limited color variants and signed, but now leaning more towards copies I can listen to and feel like it's not losing Value. I think variants are cool. I think that there is a fine line though. Like I think a label putting out a normal copy, offering an indie exclusive version, which may be a different color, and then these days, let's be honest, the big boxes get colored vinyl of almost everything. Walmart gets them of almost every damn release, which is incredibly frustrating. Sometimes they don't even do an indie release, and it just goes to a Walmart release. I digress. Um, but I think within reason, the color variants are super fun, super cool, and it's definitely pushing the industry forward in a lot of ways because new collectors are seeing that. It's eye candy. I mean, I just showed you one. Like these are super cool. It's hard to see the swirl on this, but it's a really nice copy. It's beautiful. I just think it's gotten a little out of hand. I love the last Red Hot Chili Peppers record, Unlimited Love. I think there were 20 different versions of it. That's just too much for me. I'm like, it's just saturating the market. It's kind of what Scott was saying about sports cards. It's doing that same thing. So I think, but I think that'll settle down, just like I think RSD is going to settle down in regards to like the huge FOMO that used to be around it mid COVID. Same with variants. Now a label comes out with 15 different variants of a pop punk record, which is one of the genres that is super guilty of doing this. And I think people are just going to eventually get fatigued with that because like they have like 10 different variants of this one album. They've never opened any of them because they're afraid to open one to lose value. And so they just keep everything sealed. I don't like that because like it's supposed to be about the music, right? And so that's my thing with variant collectors. I like if they're doing it for the music, great. But I think beyond that, it starts to be a little bit of a detriment, at least from my point of view. But get off my lawn, Let's see. Yeah, I love the Thin Rizzy too. Holly says, love that shirt. Holly just left my house and got right on the live chat. That's funny. Okay. Or maybe she's still at my house. She may be outside my house. I don't know. All right. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'm going to wrap up. So next week, we will talk about the RSD list because that's going to be top of mind and will be talked about a lot. Like I mentioned, if you want in at the very beginning, so circling back, if you want to get a shot at this 8 LP 30th anniversary Nirvana box set, we are raffling it off. It's called the monthly spin. I'm going to put the link here one more time. That's the monthly spin. If you missed that, I think that was the main link I shared earlier on. TJ says, yeah, Pennywise Full Circle 25-year release, 6 different copies, felt the same way. Yeah, it's like the pop punk genre in general, at least from what I've seen, is the one example of where it's gotten completely out of hand. Bands like, I'm just name dropping, but Newfound Glory and Thrice and like all these bands, they're taking advantage of it. They are taking advantage of it. And a lot of people say, hey, good for them. If their fans want it, then sell it to them. I don't disagree. People are buying it. If people are going to buy it, then labels and artists are going to keep producing it. But eventually it'll hit a wall. Eventually it'll hit a wall because these people are going to end up looking at their shelves and it's just going to be all the same damn albums. They're going to have 1,000 records, 1,000 albums on their shelf, and they only actually have like 100 records because it's all the same ones, so that's frustrating. JD said, Peter says, guilty, got 12 different copies of the last Opeth album. Sorry. Right. I mean, I'm kind of guilty on some level. I've got a few albums I've got a lot of variants of, but nothing crazy. Typically what I'll do is if I have an original, and it's obviously I'm talking older albums, original will typically be black vinyl. I love having the VMP or a color variant of a reissue. I like having one that's the original and one newer reissue that's maybe a neat color or something. That's typically what I'm after. But that's only albums I really love. Like I really love Jailbreak, which is why I got the VMP one, even though I already have an original. But I won't go beyond that. As soon as they reissue it again on a different color for indie exclusive or whatever, I'm not going to pick that one up too. So, JD says, I used to like VMP more, decided not to join in 2022, joined just for 1 month for Patsy Cline and Elton's Mad Men. That Elton copy of Mad Men is great. I just featured it. I featured it in my 1971 video that I was talking about. Here's the Mad Men. Check out this vinyl. This is probably the last one I've gotten before Thin Lizzy. This is a beautiful record on, I don't even know what I'd call it because it's not a splatter. It just says pressed on 180 gram Blue Jean Baby vinyl. It's limited to 2,500 copies. So very cool. And same exact thing. I've got a nice original copy of this album. And then this one was announced, and I was like, man, that looks really cool. I'd love to get just a super clean new version on the color, which is nice. Big fan from Spain. That's cool. So South Africa, Ireland, Spain. What do you think is more difficult? The USA bands getting released in Europe or European bands in the US? Personally, I find it really hard to find US bands nowadays here. I honestly have no idea because I'm not a world traveler. So I don't know. You would be the one to tell me. I know from dealing with distributors as far as new records coming out, reissues or new releases, that we get a pretty good shot at imports, as they're called. But again, I mean, I think that's probably a small percentage of what actually comes out overseas, because most of what I'm dealing with is like, I will call mainstream stuff coming, top 100, top 500 type of releases stuff. If it goes deeper than that, then I'm probably not even aware of it. So I don't know. I know it feels okay to me to get stuff from overseas, but I'm not sure specific to Spain, especially how that works. TJ says, no need to be sorry. It just feels like a money grab, but if you desire them, they will sell it, like you said. Hey, big fan from Scotland too. What's up, Gordon? Yeah, no, I agree, TJ. Like, it's all the bands and labels that are doing the variant stuff for the variant collectors. They're giving the people what they want. Like, they wouldn't be pressing them if they weren't selling. They wouldn't be pressing them if people weren't asking them to press them. But it's just getting to that point where it's like every few months a new version of the same album, limited to another 1,000, or something like that. It just gets really tough, but they sell out so quick and the labels are cashing in and the artists are making money, and that's great. Artists should be able to make money off of their music because they're the ones who work their asses off for it. So, all right. I think I need to sign off and get to work. Yes. I think I'm going to head from here to my storage unit, which is horribly unorganized, and start to do a few hours of work over there because I need to do it. We got a fan from Sweden as well. Good to hear that I have expanded NTX Vinyl internationally, even though it feels very, very local and mom and pop here. But really appreciate all the questions. This has been fantastic. Exactly what I had hoped, and exactly what I will plan to continue to do on this NTX Live. I've got a number of things. Basically, I've got a list on my phone to where throughout my week, as I'm working on things and thinking on things, I just dump them on my NTX Live note. And then about 30 minutes before I'm going to go live, I just go, okay, here's what I'm going to talk about in regards to what I've announced. But most importantly is this Q&A stuff, which I think will be really cool. So the next time around, again, we'll talk about RSD, and I'm sure I'll have another slew of topics that we'll go through. Hold on. Nick's got another question before I wrap up. Last question from Nick. What are your thoughts on Japanese pressings? Local shops here has a bunch, but I've never pulled the trigger. Japanese pressings, they have a stigma around them and a reputation for having great sound and great quality. That's more or less it. Is it a shoe-in across the board that every one of them is going to sound great? No, because just like I say all the time, every record is completely different in regards to where it's pressed and how it's packaged and who mastered it. So all I can say is like the reputation around Japanese pressings is really good. And so you've probably got that in your back pocket in regards to some ammo. If you're going to make a purchase, that at least you've got a good feeling, but you're usually going to pay a premium because they're imported and harder to find and more rare. I don't have a ton of them. I've got a copy of Led Zeppelin 3, which I got from a buddy of mine, and he had told me it was a really nice copy. So that's why I trusted it. So this is, I think, early 70s copy of Led Zeppelin 3. This is literally, I think, one of the only, if not the only, Japanese pressings I own. I just don't have that many of them. I love the Obi strip. It is super cool and interesting, which I think is a lot of the allure. But yeah, I don't have a lot of experience there. But from everything I've heard and read from a lot of other collectors, is that Japanese stuff typically does sound really good and is produced well. So there you go. Take it for what it's worth. Pick one up, see if you like it, go from there. So that would be my advice, Nick. Thank you all again. We will wrap it up on another episode of NTX Live. We'll see you guys again. Hopefully next week. Might be a week off. We'll see what my week of Pearl Jam travel entails, if I can squeeze this in. But thank you all again for tuning in. There was about 30 or 40 people on, which is amazing. Feel free to reach out anytime if you want to get in touch with me. info@ntxvinyl.com is my personal email. You can reach out anytime with questions, feedback, comments. Love to hear from you, and we'll see you guys soon.